All right, let's see how this goes. Um, I have a little time before dinner, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited about transitioning. So we finished the first hub chapter, and I'm really excited about this. I'm ready. I'm ready, personally, to start reading in the second hub and getting into this. It's been, I've said this, I think, in every single video that it's been for me really valuable to read the book almost with like a fresh perspective because it's been a while since I've read it. It's like a year since I wrote the final pages, which are actually the preface, the opening of the book. And the process of actually getting the book prepped for production was, it was a long process. It wasn't like published until the end of November, but that was even there just wasn't the same type of time spent like actually in the book. So I don't know how interesting that is. I don't think it's very interesting, what I'm saying. But anyway, this the I think the intended purpose of doing these live readings, which I've stated before, remains actually unchanged. So there's a lot of other stuff that is sort of shifting as I'm figuring out more and more, specifically who my work is going to be targeted on, like who I'm going to be focusing um, on when as I'm developing materials and was it like tools for paranormal practitioners. That's something that's like becoming incredibly clear and how those things are going to be built out. This has been something that yeah, that over even, I'd originally given myself the month of April and May for this process, and April turned out to be really challenging for me because because of, I think one of the things I hadn't properly accounted for was how intense, like what like the level of, I don't know, just intensity of the work that I'd been doing had been on me. And so re-regulating to that and coming into a place where I'm starting to feel really good right now. And I don't know, there's probably a lot more to be said about this, about like feeling good right now, which has not been, which really hadn't been consistent in April, as I was kind of like, whoa. But that's why moving into the second hub is really key. I'm really looking forward to it. A lot of the stuff that I've been reading about is related to the second hub. But anyway, yeah. So a lot of really cool stuff happening right now in terms of the conversations I'm having, the people that are coming forward, very interesting people as far as, folks being interested, people reading the book, what they're getting out of it. Anyway, so if you're along for the ride here with me, I'm so grateful for you. And it means the world to me. And I think the thing that has actually been kind of funny is that there are people watching the YouTubes, which is kind of nuts because I think right now I only have, like 127 subscribers. And, I think the video that has the most views has like 80 views, which in like YouTube is like pretty low key. And I don't really do a lot of promoting this yet because I don't it's like if you're watching this, I'm kind of assuming that you're somebody that has like we're relatively like we know each other at this stage and like we have trust and I've shared this with you on some level from coming from that place. So it doesn't even feel public at this point. So when people do have seen it, because it is public, it's always like, whoa, it's like kind of incredible. Like it's incredible. Yeah. So anyway, so coming out of chapter 4, I kind of like one of the things I try to do when I'm doing this is I try to like really feel into like what feels interesting to me that's coming up. And I'm gonna full disclosure, everything that I've said in the last 5 minutes like didn't have a lot of juice in it. It was just sort of like almost like clearing the pipes a little bit. Um, and this is actually something that I do professionally as when I'm presenting or when in any format, like whether it's to like a team of mine or whether it's like a presentation for like a pitch to another business or whatever. There's this kind of thing, and I really think that it's like something that like kind of everyone has access to being able to feel out, and it's that this place where there's like an energy in what you're saying where it feels kind of fresh and energized and really like kind of like has this like really good feeling, and you're not like tuned out, like you're really with it and it feels good. So we'll see if I can get to that place. um yeah, yeah, and more on that like in the future. um yeah, because I have a thing actually that's like if it feels boring to me, if it feels repetitive, I like to feel like there's like a little bit of an edge in terms of, of like kind of like what's coming up and what I'm saying, and that it feels like really fresh and that's arising for the moment versus being sort of like something that I've come up with in the past. And that look like that look that involves cobbling together like kind of previous notions that might be like well constructed, but it's like trying to stay really in the moment and have things to say that are like that just feel like kind of like they're in the right moment, if that makes any sense. So sometimes, like I think for the last month, I've been like out of that connection, and but also I'm still going to show up even if I'm not feeling that. Like, so it's part of this thing. It's like show up anyway, show up with the best that's available. And if you can't really achieve like your best performance, you just practice anyway. So here we are. Okay, I should probably be saying this earlier, but the likes and the comments, because I say it like the end of the video, which is like literally like the point of probably naturally going to be the greatest attrition. But the likes and the comments pretty much mean everything to me as far as just being encouraging. I mean, there was even somebody who posted comments on a previous video that was like, "Do you like gloves?" And honestly, I'm still in love with this person. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they meant. And honestly, whatever it was, I think it's like the best thing, like one of the best things that's happened to me on doing this. So thank you to whoever you were who asked about if I like gloves. It's like I'm so in love with the world. I'm so in love with people's weirdness. So yeah, I guess I do love like gloves. Not like a lot. I go barehanded in the winter for as long as possible. I don't know if that was the question. Anyway, okay, I'm coming back. So, okay, I don't know how much I'm gonna get in here, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So, okay. So we're starting. So here we are at the start of chapter 5, and this is because this is like has director's cut energy, which is talking a bit about the creation of the book in addition to reading it. One of the things I want to mention is that these charts that are at the top of the chapters came before I wrote the book, and these weren't the charts, but the notion of these charts as an organizing principle was one of the first things that I remember doing. And I sat down and I started to put together this idea, and something that is now like you wouldn't see now, I don't think, because I do think that the content is well organized, is that there was a significant component, especially in the early stages of the creation of this, but even into the like end, there were still things that were like structural things that were like there was a process of resolving them. So what do I mean by this? So in this chapter, so here we have the chart, which is the basics, themes, interruptions and stressors, adaptations, holding patterns, and techniques. And the first thing that I had done when I was thinking about the hubs, the name hub came from my editor. because we were trying to think about like an organizing principle, where things kind of like transfer in and out of them. Hopefully Hub gets the job done. Um, yeah, but it's even like Facet was one, but I think Facet, I don't know. Like I'm not gonna get that into it because I don't know that it's that interesting. But the idea of this organizing principle, and central to the whole thing about Parinama is that I was aware from my yoga practice that there were areas of my body that when I worked with them, I was unlocking my capability in life. And so I was seeing that in my yoga practice, especially with power and love, that I was finding that through really stoking the energy of my core and creating like more integrity in my midsection, and even like the fire of like really like kind of like a lot of stuff like Navasana and things in like Ashtanga, a number of things where I could really feel that actually like was doing something to my ability to be like hold power, and that even chest opening was like directly correlated with my ability to feel and express love. And but the thing with Parinama method was that it was dipping into like one of the things that I was finding is that there were facets that were I could sense were unaddressed and unresolved. And so one of the places was like I could feel like things that had to do with anger. I had like kind of more like I guess what's called shadow emotions that were trying to find a voice, and that they weren't really given a voice in my yoga practice, as much as that sounds a little bit nuts. Their story, it doesn't feel like it has a lot of juice when it's kind of rising, but I mean, I guess like just one quick vignette was that I was like in my practice, I was feeling that I like very conscious of the fact I was using it as an executive to make myself more effective and make myself capable of managing, of expanding my capacity to become more than I'd previously been capable. This was not a mystery to me when I was in my Ashtanga practice, that every day what I was doing is I was clearing out some of like the hygiene. I was like clearing out, like washing out some of the like residue from the previous day's like aggravations that unwashed out would like gum me up and make me less effective if I was holding on to them, but also that I was increasing my ability to be powerful, that I was increasing my ability to be loving in my partnership, and a number of other things. But one place I think that or something specifically back to the framework part with Parinama, was realizing like kind of like an organizing principle, that there were facets that I was able to access just sort of by happenstance. And then, through this exploration, that finding the places, that the facets that were less accessible to me, that actually by having them be like shrunken and not really like represented fully in my expression of myself, that was the thing I was looking for. So the stuff that easily arose, like similar to Ashtanga, like the thing that easily arising is the fact that you don't mind working hard. And so that kind of lends itself, as a like sort of third hub thing into devotion, which actually opens up, I think the fourth hub like does things for like devotion and being able to access expressions of love and by showing up for oneself every day, um, and even things that are somewhat related to feeling. But So anyway, so the idea of the organizing principle, and this is really like a really important part of Parinama, is that the two underlying facets that for me in my own personal like ongoing like I guess like journey with this is the first and the second hub, which is understanding my underlying programming around stability and trust and like my relationship with my physical body as yeah as like my like and its survival. That, and also what we're going to go into here with the second hub, which is about feeling emotion. And very importantly, the programming of this hub is, and this is, I remember actually, this is juice. So when I read Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, I remember exactly where I was in the moment. It like kind of hit me like a truck, where he addresses the fact that parental attunement, and specifically maternal attunement, was essential for establishing one's inner emotional intelligence, one's trust with one's inner life and inner self, and even the ability to like fully connect with the world. Because the thing is, like, you're feeling, and then like the caregiver is actually mirroring it back to you, which is actually creating a validation for, like, so something's arising in you, and the response, and the patterning of that response is like it's very mimicked in a sense, like even facial expressions of sadness and concern. So I remember being really alarmed because I realized for me personally that had not been something that had been like a strength of my caregiver. And immediately the way it was positioned was just that, like, this is a deficit that's just kind of like, it kind of left it there, like, this is just a problem if you didn't experience attunement in early life. So one of the things that this seeks to do here in this chapter is to actually deconstruct this to the point that it is actually addressable, both from the standpoint of not just being like, oh, you didn't have attunement, so you're not going to have this. It's like what attunement is, what emotional literacy like means, and even what new like what the deeper context of emotion and feeling are, as far as like a felt sense, that's programmed into our nervous system, as far as like the experience with pleasure and the ability to enjoy it without guilt, to like actually like the capacity for enjoying pleasure, even the capacity for being able to trust your how you feel about things. And this is also societally impacted, but like pleasure and aversion, so we lean towards and lean away from, and just an exploration of that. But I will like a whole lot that could be said on this topic. And I'm not sure, like, I feel like right now it's kind of sort of teetering on the edge of being like super sort of um like vague here. Or like maybe being a little bit nonsensical, so I want to be conscientious of that. But yeah, and I'm almost, it's like, there, on one hand I feel like I'm like I could read this table, and yeah, maybe this makes sense for this. But the thing, I mean, I think the thing, what Parinama is at its core, is it's an organizing principle for the many facets of like I'll say our nervous system, but ultimately that our nervous system represents the feelings, like like the lived experience, the sensation of our lived experience. So the stacking of that, which is like survival. So like the last hub that we just did, the first hub, is really about like physical survival at its core. And that's why death is brought up there in it, and like briefly explored, but also that birth is where we like kind of come into like a physical existence. So it's like the physical survival, and everything that's contained with that, and not and that's contains with it, in terms of a felt sense that is carried into adulthood, is anxiety or uncertainty or vigilance or feelings of just like default fear that is, kind of expansive beyond just being an acute reaction. And this isn't just, look, of course, this isn't just what's programmed into us in the initial stage, even though that really does wear the initial groove about like what we recognize and pull in as inputs that we recognize as credible. Because there's also socialization, and then there's also like events that happen throughout our lives. But I'm of the like, just where from where I see things at this point, is that these early patterns that are created really like they really create these grooves that really attract the validations of the feelings that have been, sort of like that we've adapted into. So much just in those last 21 minutes. So, yeah, okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of reading. I think I've done a little, this preamble certainly is taken up a lot of time, but I don't know, feels like it was actually pretty good. Okay. So the way this is organized, and back to like a reminder that what we do in each of these hubs is we learn what the hub actually contains. And so what I mean by this is we learn what it actually, like what part of the lived experience is represented in it and programmed, so to speak. So it's like what part of our nervous system that's associated with it is developed in this stage. And then it's like, what are the interrupting and stressing events that can be shaping? And because be shaping it, and because this is all before episodic memory, all before language, um, all before cognition, any advanced cognition is possible. The way that we can really find this in ourselves, the way we can like really like like find the hub in ourselves is really the adaptations and holding patterns, which is, as natural as beings of a like of nature, we adapt to survive. So our adaptations are really, the patterning, where we can see whether we're inflating or we're shrinking. So it's whether we're overcompensating or whether we're kind of like shrinking to like need less, overcompensating to like need more, but neither of them feel like, can be neither of these adaptations is dynamic necessarily as far as being able to be responsive to conditions. So it's kind of like when aspects of this hub are like kind of introduced as activating events, that we kind of fall into these default programming, which kind of rob us of being able to like fully be responsive and alive to the world. We're sort of responding to old patterns versus like the ones that are happening in the moment. And so, yeah, more on that. And then the techniques and exercises. And the techniques and exercises, one of the things that we're looking at here is it's a really like it's a really like nuanced combination of both full occupied ownership of ourselves. So it's like self-awareness, which means that it doesn't mean that this is like about fixing everything about ourselves, because some of this stuff is just really ultimately, it's part of it is like being able to accept it and just kind of know it, so that when we see it, we can take full accountability for it, and really speak to it, work with it, and be, really like I guess like adults about it, versus being operated from the subconscious and just being kind of like, wait, what do you mean? Or even defensive about our behavior. It's like just owning it, it's like it really is, um, the difference between something being kind of like a flaw and just being like sort of confidently owned is like kind of just in that is just being like, yeah, this is how I respond to that typically, and so the next move on that is about being able to expand that dynamism. So what we're talking about with inflating and shrinking is to just expand the dynamism for responsiveness and also tools to work with limited capacity in a hub so that we can expand it and just become more fully alive. I mean, this is really what this is to just experience life in a fuller, richer, I mean, honestly, it's just fulfilled way. I think it was Carl Jung, who said, the meaning of life, once you feel more fully alive, like the meaning's obvious. It's to feel more fully alive. So the basics in this hub. So learning what the hub is. So the basics are feeling and emotion, sensation and touch, attunement and attachment, and themes are pleasure and aversion, change and ambiguity, laughter, movement and coordination, boundary and differentiation, hidden self and projection. So the interruptions and stressors of this hub are chronically distracted, distressed, or emotionally immature parents, enmeshment, lacking emotional boundary and differentiation, the museum, the emotionally intolerant home, the circus, the emotionally chaotic home, intermittent reinforcement. So yeah, more on that. In yeah, and trauma, like the capital T kind. So adaptations and holding patterns. So it's like the characteristics. So this is more like a table of contents here, where it's like the out of, the balanced and out of balance second hub. So inflating, shrinking, combination, and then balance. And then a shrinking strategy, intuition, and intellectualization. Kind of a continuation of something we see in the first hub. Tolerance for touch, pacifiers, the shadow, guilt, chronic pain, and suppressed emotions as a chronic pain and suppressed emotions as like a suite as like being linked together. And then the techniques and exercises are the right to feel, expanding the container, working with feelings, tapping, emotional literacy, and charge and discharge. It's like one thing just as I'm reading this is that it's the memory of how how much diligence went into the organization of this, because it really was unprecedented in terms of like its existence. And it was interesting. I was looking at somebody's Kate O'Donnell's cookbook today, and and one of the things of looking at it as somebody who's produced a book, it's like a totally different experience because there's so much stuff that we see, and we kind of like are like, oh, that's nice, and it's like looking at something from understanding what it takes to produce new ideas and organize them in a way that make them like communicate them effectively. It's really a practice. I mean, it was one of great joy. These charts were, it was a PowerPoint slide that I started at Crapalo in Western Mass in the cafe when I was trying to put these thoughts together about how to organize this. And at some point, I'm gonna have to pull that up and see. Like, I mean, it's like it's incredibly different than what this is, but I mean, that's one thing too, actually, that I'll make a note of, which is that the idea that the first whack at something has to be good is, it's kind of like like that really limits people, like thinking that the first draft or the first like take on something, but it's like usually absurdly far off from where it goes, but just needs to start somewhere. And I remember really enjoying doing it. And for a long time, even when I was writing the book, it kind of sat sort of on the sidelines where I was like, I don't really know where this belongs. And it wasn't really like organized yet, but but then it came through and it really was clear that these are the chapter headers, and how to organize it was to illustrate the structure of the chapter. So this is the structure of the chapter. And in some ways I think if I'd kept writing the book that maybe this would have even evolved, but this is really, I mean, where this is at right now is just like so like totally like in a good place. So maybe the second edition, good gravy. Okay, so I'm just gonna read a little bit and then I'm gonna wrap it up. This is actually feeling, for the first time in a while, this is feeling like pretty good. Wow, that little hair squiggle tells you how much I look at myself. Not a lot in this camera. Get in the zone here. But anyway, so I'm gonna just start here, and then we're gonna do kind of more in the coming days. But just before I jump in, I just had another like kind of surge of the feeling of just love for you, and that if you're watching this, if you're reading this book, that while I was writing it, and for people that know me, they know I kind of disappeared for years, truly, into the process, and that you were always with me. Like I always really felt this connection to who this was for and who I wanted to be communicating this with. So it means a lot in this moment to be even, I mean, like granted this video, I'm not talking to anybody, but like that like in the moment, wherever you are watching this, like I mean, because I guess that is echoes of it as I'm recording this. This is not being watched, but it's a lot closer to when I was writing the book and knowing that it's like really far away from eyeballs. And now people have read it. Like it's kind of it's kind of cool. I mean, one of the things about reading this now is like, just like those types of things about being like, fuck, there's like hundreds of copies of this out in the world, and that there are people that are experiencing it and having, and just that like and really reconnecting to that process of writing it and creating it in my own feeling, in my heart and my soul as it was arising. It's really like, I really want to share that with you. I really want you to have that because, like before it's like, here we go. I had a lunch today with a guy who's an executive. No, this is another thing. Everyone's always like, I wish more people thought like this. I'm like, they do. Um, but we were talking about how the process and the space that I went into, as far as like this creative space of really getting into the zone and really receiving this type of like kind of direction of destiny, that this is for everyone. That's what this book is about. It's very meta. It's like I'm writing a book about achieving, this is right now is like sort of clearing the path, the self-actualization where we're going through the hubs. And then in the 12th chapter, we get into the creation and building. But this is really ultimately about the fulfillment, like just fulfillment, like achieving fulfillment. And I don't mean doing things for what you create. It's like the experience of the achievement and the fulfillment. That's what I want. Like it's just that it's just feel this so deeply. It's just like, wow, okay. Let me take a minute. I feel that. It's for you. It is for you. Like this, like whatever it is, the sense of the importance of your life, the sense of what aches in you to be created or to be discovered and found and created, that's real. It is real. All right. Ooh, let's take a breath on this one. I really, in through the nose, sniff the flowers and blow out the candle. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's really good. Okay. So chapter 5, the second hub, feel, movement and emotion. So this is the opening quote, which is, baseball is the president tossing out the first ball of the season in a scrubby school boy playing catch with his dad on a Mississippi farm. Ernie Harwell. Yeah. I'm actually not going to give context to that. It comes later, but there are people that, yeah, game of catch, attunement, hint. All right. So it's against the law of nature for anything alive to remain unchanged and still be living. Rigid standards for our bodies are only temporarily achievable from day to day, and depending on stress, sleep, food, physical movement, and water take, our appearance can shift from glowing and rested to puffy and exhausted. Again, an alive body is constantly changing. Every day, our physical ability, body shape, size, appearance, and health change. The signatures of the second hub are movement, sensation, emotion, and change. But if we tend to block out what we feel and desire, we become out of sync with ourselves and the world and grow increasingly rigid and resistant to change. The safety and solidity of the first hub is essential for having a positive relationship with change. Without the sense of protection, in the case of a baby, a trusted caregiver to return to, being brave and adventurous isn't realistic. Autonomy requires a safety net. During the initial development of the second hub, children begin to explore, wishing to taste and touch their surroundings to figure out what they like and what they don't like. A facet of our identity, of your identity, is your unique profile of likes and dislikes, preferences and desires. As adults, joyless grinding at work and in life creates friction, and friction overloads a motor, eventually burning it out. Oh, here we go. Jung said, "It is not the meaning of life we seek, but a greater feeling of aliveness." That's what he said. Scratch what I said earlier. Good Lord. That's a translation anyway. So the resilience, vitality, sensation, and integrity experienced in movement and joy within our changing body is how we experience our aliveness. Our body mind holds buried feelings and thoughts, and as they surface, like warming frozen toes and fingers from the cold, we experience discomfort as flow is restored. This flow brings aliveness in the form of a second hub sensation, pleasure, and vitality. Once we have this feeling of aliveness, the meaning of life becomes self-evident. Oh my God, I love you so much. I love you so much. I'm sending you love wherever you are right now. I can't wait for the next time. Please give any comments for anything that you want to expand on, anything you have questions about, even if you're like, I don't agree with that. I love a discussion. I love hearing how just anything. But yeah, it means a lot to me and I can't wait until next time. See you soon. All right. Bye.